Sometimes, life doesn't shatter with a scream. It ends in silence, in a signature, a nod, a final click of a pen. And in that quiet, something else begins. After her divorce, she got drunk, but woke up in a CEO's house, which changed her life forever. The divorce papers felt heavy in Lena Moore's hands as she stared at her signature, still fresh on the crisp legal document. 7 years of marriage reduced to a few sheets of paper and a pen stroke. The upscale law office in downtown Seattle suddenly felt suffocating. Its minimalist decor and floor-to-ceiling windows doing nothing to ease the hollow ache in her chest. "Ms. Moore?" The lawyer's voice barely registered. "Would you like a copy sent to your email as well?" Lena managed a slight nod, her fingers unconsciously tracing the place where a gold band once sat. At 31, she was divorced. The word felt foreign, like a coat that didn't quite fit. She couldn't take it off. "That's all then," the lawyer continued, gathering the papers with practiced efficiency. "Your marriage to Brian Keller is officially dissolved." Dissolved, like sugar in hot coffee, like dreams in cold reality. Lena stood up, smoothing down her deep green dress, the one she had bought specifically for this day, determined not to look like the broken woman Brian probably expected her to be. "Thank you," she said, proud that her voice didn't waver. The clicking of her heels against the marble floor echoed through the hallway as she made her way to the elevator. Each step felt like another nail in the coffin of her failed marriage. The afternoon sun hit her face as she stepped onto the bustling Seattle street. Around her, life continued at its usual relentless pace. Buses groaned at stops, coffee carts served long lines, tourists snapped photos of the waterfront. None of them knew that Lena Moore's world had just ended and begun again in the same breath. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Jenna. "All done? Want me to come over?" Lena typed back, "Need some time alone. Rain check? You sure? Don't do anything crazy." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. Crazy? Like staying in a loveless marriage 3 years too long? Like believing Brian's promises to change every time she found him working late with his young, eager project manager? Instead of heading home to her quiet apartment in Capitol Hill, Lena found herself walking into a high-end bar near Pioneer Square. The kind of place she never would have dared during her marriage. Brian always insisted on sports bars and greasy food, claiming upscale spots were pretentious. "Please," she told the bartender, sliding onto a sleek leather stool. "Make it a double." The first sip burned, the second went down easier. By the third, the edges of her pain had softened just enough to be bearable. The bar had filled up with the after-work crowd. Men in tailored suits, women in sharp blazers, all of them wearing the slightly haunted look of people who had traded too much of themselves for a paycheck. "Rough day?" Lena turned toward the voice, and found herself staring into the most intense gray eyes she'd ever seen. The man beside her radiated the kind of quiet authority that comes from being used to having his word followed without argument. His black suit looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. But it was his expression that caught her, the mix of curiosity and something else she couldn't quite read. "You could say that," she replied, raising her glass in a mock toast. "I just signed my divorce papers." "Congratulations." The response was so unexpected, it made Lena laugh. Most people say, "I'm sorry," when they hear about divorce. Most people are lying. He signaled to the bartender. "Another round for the lady. I'll have the same." "I don't need charity," Lena protested. He merely smiled, just the faintest upturn of his lips, which somehow made him even more striking. "Consider it a celebration of your freedom." 2 hours and several drinks later, Lena found herself talking more than she had in months. She shared stories she'd never even told Jenna, about how Brian had slowly chipped away at her confidence, how he'd made her feel insane for suspecting his cheating, how she'd lost herself trying to become the wife he wanted. The words poured out of her like they had been bottled up for years. Shaky at first, then flowing faster with each sip, each nod from the man beside her. She was surprised by how easy it felt to speak freely, to not be interrupted or dismissed. With Jenna, she had always held a little back to avoid worrying her. With Brian, honesty had felt like a landmine. But with this stranger, she felt safe. Not judged, just heard. The stranger, still nameless, listened with a focus that should have made her uneasy, but instead, it made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in years. What would you do, he asked during a lull in the conversation, if you could start over? No limits, no past holding you back. The alcohol loosened her tongue, made her brutally honest. I'd stop being afraid, she said. I'd build something that's mine, not someone else's version of who I should be. His eyes darkened, not with judgment, but something like interest. And what's stopping you? Reality. Money. The fact that I just spent the last 7 years being nothing but Brian Keller's wife. Those sound like excuses. The words should have pissed her off, but the way he said them, so calm, so matter-of-fact, made her pause. Maybe they are, she admitted, pushing herself up from the bar. The room tilted. But they're my excuses, and I've earned them. She took a step and stumbled. His hand shot out, warm and steady at her waist. Let me call you a car. I can manage, she said, even though they both knew she couldn't. The emotional wreckage and alcohol had turned her legs to jelly. I'm sure you can, he said, gentler now. But you don't have to. His voice had changed, softer now, almost cautious. She looked up and saw no pity in his face, only understanding and something steadier. It was such a small thing, but it cracked something in her. For the first time in years, someone was offering to help without asking for something in return. And for the first time, she let herself accept it, not because she was weak, but because she didn't want to carry everything alone anymore. That was the last thing Lena remembered clearly from that night. The rest came in fragments. Slipping into a sleek black car, city lights blurring by, the subtle, expensive scent of his cologne as he helped keep her upright. When she woke the next morning, reality hit like a hammer. She opened her eyes to find herself in an unfamiliar bed, in what had to be the most elegant bedroom she'd ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Puget Sound, and the sheets beneath her felt like clouds woven from Egyptian cotton. Oh God, she groaned, sitting up slowly. She was still wearing her deep green dress from the night before, though someone had removed her shoes and placed them neatly beside a velvet armchair. Good morning. Lena turned sharply toward the voice and found him standing in the doorway, immaculate in a fresh suit, holding 2 cups of coffee. 2 cups of coffee. In the harsh morning light, he looked even more commanding, all sharp lines and composed power. I'm Grayson Ellis, he said, offering her one of the cups, and I have a proposition for you. Lena took the coffee with trembling hands, her thoughts spinning. Grayson Ellis, CEO of Ellis Global, infamous for his relentless business strategies and near-mythical level of privacy. She'd seen his face in financial publications before, but none of the photos had done him justice. He looked completely at ease in his environment, impeccably dressed, poised, in control. Meanwhile, Lena sat there still in her wrinkled dress, mascara faintly smudged, heart pounding in her chest. The contrast between them couldn't have been sharper, and it made her feel all the more exposed. Whatever happened last night, she began, but he cut her off with a subtle shake of his head. Nothing happened. You were in no condition to consent to anything. And I'm not that kind of man. His eyes locked on hers with an unwavering calm. But I am the kind of man who recognizes potential when I see it. Potential? Lena nearly laughed. I'm a drunk divorcee who passed out in a stranger's penthouse. You're a woman who survived years of emotional erosion without losing your core. That's rare and impressive. He sat in the armchair across from the bed. Though relaxed in posture, his gaze was sharp and focused. Last night, you said you wanted to build something of your own. I can help make that happen. Lena blinked at him, suspicious. Why would you want to help me? I have my reasons, he replied simply. He reached into his blazer and pulled out a business card, placing it on the nightstand. Lena stared at the card for a moment, afraid to touch it. The situation felt unreal, like she was being invited into a world she didn't belong to. But beneath the skepticism was something more dangerous. Hope. And that, she knew, could ruin her faster than any mistake she'd made in her marriage. Think about it. Call when you're ready to hear my proposal. There's a car waiting downstairs to take you home. He walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Lena, next time we meet, I expect you to be sober. And then he was gone. Lena sat frozen in the luxurious bed, the coffee cooling in her hands. Her head throbbed, her mouth felt like sandpaper. Her life had just veered onto a path she could never have predicted. The card was understated but elegant. Thick cream stock. No name, no company, no title, just a phone number embossed in clean silver ink. Just like the man, revealing nothing while implying everything. Lena picked it up, running her finger over the raised numbers. One call. It could change everything, or wreck what little she had left. Was she brave enough to find out which? 3 days. That's how long Lena stared at Grayson Ellis's business card before finally dialing the number. 3 days of pacing her cramped Capitol Hill apartment, caught in an endless loop of doubt and what-ifs. She imagined every outcome, tried to reason with herself that calling a man she'd met during a breakdown wasn't the sanest decision she'd ever make. But every time she put the card down, she picked it back up again. She couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said, about building something of her own. For the first time in years, someone had looked at her and seen more than just the mistakes she'd made. That thought lingered like a whisper in the back of her mind, impossible to ignore. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across her hardwood floor as she finally picked up her phone. Her phone felt heavy in her hand as she dialed, each number bringing her closer to what might be the biggest mistake or boldest move of her life. The line rang twice before a crisp female voice answered. Mr. Ellis's office. This is Lena Moore. I was given this number. Yes, Miss Moore. Mr. Ellis has been expecting your call. Please hold. Before Lena could even begin to unpack what that meant, how someone like Grayson Ellis, one of Seattle's most powerful CEOs, had been waiting for her call, his deep voice filled the line. Lena, I was starting to think you'd thrown my card away. I considered it, she admitted, her heart thudding. Several times, actually. But you didn't? There was a note of satisfaction in his tone. Can you be at the Ellis building in an hour? Lena glanced at her reflection in the window, messy bun, bare face, yoga pants, and an oversized hoodie. Yes, I can make it. Good. Tell security your name when you arrive. He paused. And Lena, this time, dress for the job you want, not the life you're leaving behind. The line went dead before she could say anything. Lena stared at her phone, equal parts annoyed and intrigued by his nerve. Who was he to dictate how she should dress? But the irritation was quickly chased by something colder. Doubt. A memory surfaced, sharp and cruel. Brian's voice, low and mocking, when she once wore that same designer dress for an interview 2 years ago. You look like you're playing dress-up, he'd said. No one's going to take you seriously in that. She'd shoved the dress to the back of her closet after that, until now. But annoyance wasn't the only thing churning in her chest. Underneath it, something else stirred. Curiosity, maybe. Or the quiet thrill of stepping into something unknown. As she stood there, the voice in her head, the one that used to sound a lot like Brian, told her she wasn't enough. Wasn't the right type, didn't belong. But she was tired of that voice. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to stop listening. But even as the irritation rose, her feet were already carrying her toward the bedroom. She pulled out the only designer dress she owned, a sleek black sheath she had bought for interviews but never dared to wear. Her fingers hesitated at the zipper. What if she still looked like someone pretending to be confident? What if nothing had changed? But she forced herself to breathe, to move. Putting on the dress wasn't just about fashion. It was a quiet rebellion against everything that had once made her small. As she slid into the dress, she realized how long it had been since she'd looked at herself and seen possibility instead of past mistakes. The fabric hugged her body with a confidence she didn't quite feel yet, but wanted to. She added a touch of makeup, not to impress him, but to remind herself who she was, who she could be again. 58 minutes later, Lena stood in the gleaming lobby of the Ellis building. Her hair was swept up in an elegant knot, her makeup subtle but defined. She looked composed, purposeful. The security guard checked her ID, then gestured toward a private elevator. Top floor. They're expecting you. The elevator ride gave Lena far too much time to doubt herself. What on earth was she doing? What could Grayson Ellis possibly want with her? Her fingers curled around the strap of her purse as the numbers ticked higher. Her reflection in the polished elevator walls looked calm, but her stomach was a war zone. She had always dreamed of being in a room like this, but not like this. Not as a question mark. Not as someone unsure whether she was walking into an opportunity or a trap. The doors opened directly into a reception area so sleek it made her pause. Glass walls gave way to an unbelievable view of downtown Seattle. "Miss Moore?" An elegant woman in her 50s greeted her with a polished smile. "Please, follow me." Lena was led through towering glass doors into an office that redefined executive luxury. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the skyline. The furnishings were modern but restrained, speaking of power, not excess. Grayson stood near one of the windows, back to her, his voice low but resolute on a call. "Yes, that's correct. No negotiations," he said, his tone wrapped in silk over steel. "They accept the terms by end of day, or we proceed with the hostile acquisition." He ended the call and turned to face her. Lena's breath caught. He radiated even more authority than she remembered. His gray eyes swept over her, lingering just long enough to make her skin warm. "Much better," he said, gesturing toward the leather chairs in front of his desk. "Please, sit. Is this where you finally tell me what was so urgent it couldn't be said over the phone?" She was proud, her voice didn't waver. Grayson's mouth curved in what barely passed for a smile as he lowered into his seat behind a massive desk. "This is where I offer you the chance to change your life." He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. "But first, tell me, what do you know about Ellis Global?" Lena straightened slightly. "You're one of the largest privately held corporations in the country. You specialize in technology and commercial real estate development. You're known for acquiring struggling companies, either turning them around or breaking them apart for assets." "Very good. What else?" "Your reputation is controversial," Lena said. "Some call you brilliant, others ruthless. You've never lost a corporate fight. And you're famously private when it comes to your personal life." Grayson's eyes locked onto hers, a hint of challenge. "And what do you think?" Lena didn't flinch. "I think successful people always attract controversy, and I think privacy is underrated in this world." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe? He opened the folder and slid a single page across the desk. "Read this." Lena picked up the document. Her eyes widened as she scanned the contents. "This is a job offer," Grayson said. "Executive assistant to the CEO. Salary, likely triple what you earned before. Full benefits, stock options, performance bonuses." "Why me?" she asked, looking up. "You don't know anything about my background." "I know everything about you, Lena Moore." He pulled out another sheet from the folder. "You graduated summa cum laude from the University of Washington, double major in business and communications. You were set for a strong career until you married Brian Keller and let him talk you into becoming his assistant instead." Lena's cheeks flushed with heat. "You had me investigated." "I don't make decisions without all the facts," he said flatly, not a hint of apology in his tone. "I also know that, even while you were pushed into a supporting role, you essentially ran your husband's division. Under your quiet management, quarterly performance improved by 40%. And yet, he took all the credit." "That's in the past," Lena said stiffly. "No, that's proof of what you're capable of." Grayson leaned forward slightly. "You have talent, Lena. What you lack is opportunity and confidence. I'm offering you both." "In exchange for?" Because of course, there had to be a catch. Men like Grayson Ellis didn't hand out life-changing chances out of generosity. "Your full dedication to the role," he said. "No distractions, no divided loyalties." His eyes didn't waver. "And your discretion regarding certain aspects of our working relationship." Lena's pulse jumped. "What aspects?" "To the public, you'll appear to be more than just my assistant," he said plainly, like he was talking about a quarterly forecast. "There's been pressure from investors and the media, questions about my lack of personal involvement. The board thinks it makes me look unstable." He met her gaze evenly. "Having you at my side for events, meetings, social functions would resolve that." "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" Lena asked, almost laughing. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" he replied coolly. "You get financial independence and a career most people would kill for. I get a competent assistant and an end to the gossip." He shrugged with elegant ease. "It's a business arrangement, nothing more." "And what happens?" Lena asked, "when you meet someone you actually want to date?" "I won't." His tone left no room for doubt. "Romance is a distraction I neither want nor need. This arrangement would be temporary, a year, maybe 2. Long enough to satisfy the board and give you the experience and network to go anywhere you want after." Lena stood, suddenly needing space. She walked to the window, staring out at the Seattle skyline. The logical move would be to walk away, to find a normal job, with normal hours and normal expectations. But normal hadn't gotten her very far. Normal had given her a man who belittled her ideas and dismissed her dreams. Normal had left her feeling small, forgettable. Grayson's offer wasn't normal, but maybe that was the point. Maybe she was finally done choosing the safe route, only to end up lost anyway. Still, a shadow passed through her thoughts. The last time she'd followed someone else's lead, it had cost her years. Brian used to call it support when he asked her to abandon her marketing pitch to push his instead. "You're better behind the scenes, Lena," he'd say with a smile that never reached his eyes. That same smile crept into her memory now, uninvited. "Why did you really choose me?" she asked, still facing the view. There must be 100 more qualified candidates who would jump at this. She heard his footsteps as he moved behind her. "Because when I asked what you'd do with a second chance, you didn't talk about status or money," he said, his voice low. "You talked about building something of your own." He was closer now, just behind her. "And because you're the first person I've met in a long time who sees a man when they look at me, not just a corporate empire." Lena turned, surprised by how near he was. This close, she could see the silver flecks in his storm-gray eyes, feel the weight of his presence pulling at her like a magnet. Her breath caught, not just from his proximity, but from the honesty of his words. She had spent so long being invisible, first to Brian, then to the world around her, that the idea of someone truly seeing her was almost unbearable. Almost. Could she trust her instincts this time? Or was this just another illusion of power disguised as an opportunity? Her heart tugged in one direction, her memories in another. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "there would have to be boundaries." "Of course." He stepped back, the professional mask sliding smoothly back into place. "Everything will be clearly spelled out in the contract. Take it home, review it with a lawyer if you want. But I'll need your answer by tomorrow evening." Right on cue, his assistant appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Ellis, your 3 o'clock is here." Grayson nodded, then turned back to Lena. "The car downstairs will take you home." He handed her the folder. "Oh, and Lena, don't let the fear of change keep you from reaching for what you deserve." Walking out of the Ellis building, Lena felt like she was floating. The folder in her hands held either her salvation or her downfall, and she had less than 36 hours to decide which. Her phone buzzed. Expecting a text from Jenna, she was stunned to see Brian's name on the screen. "We need to talk. I made a mistake. Please meet me for coffee." Lena stared at the message, her grip tightening around the folder. 5 years ago, that text would have sent her running back. Now, it only solidified her resolve. Some doors needed to stay closed, for new ones to open. The question was she ready to walk through? 2 weeks into her new position at Ellis Global, Lena was starting to understand why Grayson Ellis had the reputation he did. For brilliance, yes, but also for ruthless efficiency. From her desk, a glass-walled alcove connected directly to his office, she watched him dismantle another competitor during a video conference. "Your company's value dropped 12% following the data breach," Grayson said, his voice level, calm. Too calm. Lena had learned that was his most dangerous tone. "You can either accept our offer now, or watch it drop further. Another 20% when the full report hits tomorrow." Lena tried not to admire the elegant brutality of Grayson's strategy, but it was like watching a chess grandmaster dismantle his opponent piece by piece. He always seemed to be several moves ahead. On screen, the CEO on the other end looked stunned. Finally, he nodded. "Send over the paperwork." When the call ended, Lena entered Grayson's office with a stack of fresh contracts requiring his signature. "That was impressive," she said, placing the documents on his desk. "Terrifying, but impressive." "Business isn't about being liked," he replied, though a flicker of amusement touched his eyes. "It's about being effective." He glanced at his watch. "Are you ready for tonight?" Lena's stomach twisted. Tonight was their first official public appearance, a charity gala brimming with Seattle's elite. "As ready as I'll ever be." "The dress I sent over, did it fit properly?" "You mean the Valentino gown that probably costs more than my old annual salary?" Lena arched an eyebrow. "Yes, it fits, though you really didn't have to." Image is everything in this world, he cut in smoothly. You're not just my assistant anymore, Lena. You're an extension of Ellis Global. His eyes drifted briefly over her outfit, a sharply tailored black pantsuit she'd bought with her first paycheck. You're learning, but tonight needs to be perfect. Before Lena could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced down and froze. Brian, saw your photo in the business section. Working for Ellis now? We really need to talk. You're making a huge mistake. Her fingers trembled as she deleted the message. It wasn't the first one he'd sent since she'd taken the job, but it was the most direct. The words on the screen stung more than she expected. Not because she missed him, but because even now, even after everything, he still tried to control the narrative, still acted like he had a right to question her choices. She prayed Grayson hadn't noticed. Of course he had. Problem? No, she said too quickly. Grayson stood and moved around the desk until he was facing her. Rule number 1 in our arrangement, Lena. Don't lie to me. Ever. She met his gaze, defiant. It's personal, not relevant to work. Everything about you is relevant to this arrangement. His tone softened slightly. Brian? Lena gave a reluctant nod. He won't stop texting, nothing threatening, just persistent. Something dark flashed behind Grayson's eyes. Do you want me to handle it? No. The word came out sharper than she meant. She steadied herself. No, thank you. I need to handle this myself. There was a long pause between them, filled with something unspoken. Lena could feel the weight of Grayson's stare, sharp, assessing, but also something else, something more protective than possessive. Grayson studied her for a beat before nodding. Very well. The car picks you up at 7. He turned back to his work, effectively dismissing her. Later that evening, Lena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the reflection staring back. The deep burgundy Valentino gown fit her like it had been custom-made. Its sleek silhouette gave her an air of elegance and mystery. She'd spent over an hour on her makeup, perfecting a smoky eye that made her hazel eyes look wide and dramatic. A text from Jenna popped up on Lena's screen. Holy, you're going to the Morrison Foundation Gala with Grayson Ellis? Call me. Lena smiled, typing back, part of the job. Don't believe everything you read in the society pages. Just as she hit send, the doorbell rang, exactly at 7. She grabbed her clutch, took one final glance in the mirror, and opened the door. Only it wasn't the driver. It was Brian. Lena instinctively stepped back. Brian, what are you doing here? You look. His eyes moved slowly over her gown in a way that made her skin prickle. Beautiful. Getting all dressed up for Ellis? You need to leave, Lena said, reaching for her phone. But Brian grabbed her wrist. Come on, Len, we need to talk. His grip wasn't painful, but it was tight enough to raise every internal alarm. You can't seriously be involved with him. Do you know what people say about Ellis in the business world? Let go of me. Lena's voice was steady, even though her heart raced. Now you're making a scene, Brian hissed, but his grip loosened slightly. I'm trying to protect you. Ellis is dangerous. He destroys everything he touches. Like you destroyed my confidence? Lena snapped. Like you wasted 5 years of my life? That's not fair. Miss Moore? A deep voice cut in from the hallway. Lena turned to see Watson, one of Grayson's security team, standing at her door. She'd only met him once, but his quiet authority filled the space like a warning. Brian immediately stepped back, his entire demeanor shifting to something more polished. We were just talking. Miss Moore? Watson said, ignoring Brian completely, his gaze fixed on Lena. Mr. Ellis is waiting in the car. I'm fine, Lena said, walking past Brian without a second glance. Please make sure Mr. Keller finds his way to the elevator. In the elevator, Lena's hands trembled. She pressed them against the cold metal wall, trying to calm herself. He won't be able to enter the building again, Watson said quietly. We've already updated the security protocols. Lena nodded, grateful. She spent the rest of the ride steadying herself. Brian wouldn't ruin this night. He wouldn't take anything else from her. Grayson was waiting in the back of the Rolls-Royce, looking devastatingly sharp in a black tuxedo. One look at her face and his expression darkened. What happened? Brian was at my door. Lena slid into the car carefully, not wanting to wrinkle the gown. It's handled. Clearly. Grayson's tone could have turned flames to ice. That's why you're trembling. I said it's handled. Lena met his gaze squarely. You hired me because you believed in my capabilities, right? He said nothing. So believe in them now. Something shifted in Grayson's expression. Respect, maybe? Or something close to understanding. He reached into a compartment and pulled out a small velvet box. These seem appropriate for tonight. Lena opened it and inhaled sharply. Diamond drop earrings. Elegant, exquisite, likely worth more than her entire student loan debt. Grayson, wear them, he said simply. Consider it part of the business arrangement. As Lena fastened the earrings, she caught him watching her in the dim lighting of the car. There was something in his expression she couldn't quite read, something that made Lena's pulse pick up in a way that had nothing to do with fear. One more thing, Grayson said as they neared the venue. The press will be watching us closely tonight, looking for any sign this isn't real. Every look, every touch, they'll scrutinize it. Are you ready for that? Lena thought of Brian's possessive grip, of 5 years spent shrinking herself to fit into someone else's idea of who she should be. Then she thought about the way Grayson looked at her, not like something to be claimed, but like an equal. A force. Yes, she said firmly, I'm ready. The car pulled up to a red carpet flanked by photographers. Just before the door opened, Grayson reached for her hand. His touch was steady, warm, confident, but not possessive. Remember, he murmured, you belong here just as much as anyone else. The door opened, and Lena stepped into a wall of flashing lights. Grayson's hand moved to the small of her back, grounding her. She lifted her chin, letting a hint of a knowing smile curve her lips. Let them stare. Let them speculate. Let Brian see the photos tomorrow and realize exactly what he'd lost. Tonight wasn't about him, and it wasn't even about Grayson. Tonight was about Lena Moore, walking into her own power, one designer heel at a time. The crowd, the lights, the intensity, none of it shook her. Instead, it fed something deep inside her, something that had been sleeping for years. For the first time in forever, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, not as someone's accessory, not as someone's shadow, but as herself. But as Grayson leaned in to whisper something, strictly for the cameras, of course, Lena felt a flutter low in her stomach. Something dangerous. Something real. Because no matter how brave her thoughts were, no matter how firmly she reminded herself this was all business, her body didn't seem to believe her. Rule number 1 was never lie to Grayson Ellis. But as they made their way through the dazzling crowd, Lena started to wonder if she was lying to herself instead. The next morning, Lena's face was everywhere. Business headlines, society blogs, social media. Mystery woman captures Ellis's heart. Power couple alert, Grayson Ellis's new romance. Every article dissected their every look, every hand placement, every whispered word. Well, Jenna said, stirring her coffee across from Lena at their favorite cafe, you sure know how to make an entrance. She turned her tablet to show Lena a particularly intimate photo, Grayson's hand resting at her waist, his mouth close to her ear. Care to explain what's really going on? Lena stalled, stirring her own drink. It's complicated. That's not a denial. Jenna leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Lena, I've known you since freshman year. I've never seen you look at anyone the way you're looking at him in these pictures. Not even Brian. It's business, Lena insisted, just a mutually beneficial arrangement. Right, because Grayson Ellis, Seattle's most untouchable CEO, routinely escorts his assistants to black-tie galas and drops enough jewelry to cover a mortgage. Lena opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. Because it wasn't just Jenna's words that rang in her ears. It was the echo of her own heartbeat last night, standing beside him, feeling that impossible tension between them. Before Lena could respond, her phone buzzed. A message from Grayson's private line. Come to the office. Now. Emergency. I have to go, Lena said, grabbing her things. Rain check on the interrogation? This conversation is far from over, Jenna called after her as Lena hurried out. Lena stepped onto the executive floor and immediately sensed the chaos. Junior execs rushed in and out of offices, phones rang off the hook, and tension practically buzzed in the air. Inside his office, Grayson stood with his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking every bit like a general mapping out a war plan. Multiple screens displayed alarming stock tickers and news updates. What's happening? Lena asked, closing the door behind her. We have a leak, Grayson said, his voice low and tightly controlled. Someone accessed confidential details about our upcoming merger with TechVision and sold it to a competitor. The The stock is tanking. Lena moved beside him, eyes scanning the data on the screens. How bad? Bad enough to jeopardize the entire deal, if we don't get control before market close. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare crack in his composed exterior. We need to find the source, fast, and develop a counter-strategy. I can help. Lena was already in motion, heading for her desk. I'll start with the access logs for the merger files. For the next few hours, they worked like a well-oiled machine. Lena's meticulous organization balanced Grayson's strategic fire. She anticipated his requests, handed over reports before he asked, and kept the chaos outside their glass walls at bay. While you work your magic, she said around noon, setting a coffee on his desk, you also need caffeine and food. She placed a protein bar beside the mug. Grayson looked up, really looked at her, for the first time in hours. There was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. You're good at this. At fetching coffee? She quipped, arching a brow. At reading people, he replied evenly. At knowing what they need. He took a sip. It was exactly how he liked it. At being indispensable. The words landed heavier than she expected. Once, in her past life with Brian, she'd made a similar effort, running late nights, preparing reports, saving projects behind the scenes. And still, he'd told her she was just supporting staff. Not essential. Not irreplaceable. But Grayson saw her. Really saw her. And it scared her, because it meant she could lose something real, again. Before Lena could say anything, her screen pinged with an alert. Grayson, look at this. She turned her monitor toward him. There's something strange in the access logs. Multiple login attempts from a single IP address, using credentials that should have been deactivated months ago. Grayson moved behind her, leaning in to get a better view, his presence warm at her back. Whose credentials? Lena's stomach sank as the user ID popped up. Amanda Pierce, she said quietly. Brian's former assistant. The one he... Grayson's hand tightened on the back of her chair. Call security. Have them. But a commotion outside cut him off. Through the glass, they saw Brian storming down the corridor, brushing past two security guards trying to stop him. Sir, you can't, one began. Brian shoved him aside and burst through the door. Really, Lena? His voice dripped with venom as his eyes took in her closeness to Grayson. Sleeping your way to the top? I thought you had more self-respect. Grayson tensed behind her, but before he could move, Lena stood. You need to leave, Brian, now. Not until we talk. His eyes were wild, his usually polished appearance unraveled. You're making a huge mistake. Ellis is using you, just like he uses everyone. Ask him about his family. Ask him what happened to. That's enough. Grayson's voice sliced through the air like a blade. He pressed a button on his desk. Within seconds, more security entered the office. Remove him and contact legal. I want a restraining order filed immediately. As the guards dragged Brian away, he twisted around and shouted over his shoulder. You think you know him, Lena? You don't know anything. Ask him about Catherine. Ask him what really happened 3 years ago. The silence that followed his exit was suffocating. Lena's hands trembled, not with fear but fury. I'm so sorry. I never thought he'd... Don't, Grayson said tightly, his back to her now, posture rigid as he stared out the window. Don't apologize for him. He stood in silence, tension radiating off him. Lena watched the muscles in his shoulders tighten beneath his shirt, the way his hands gripped the edge of the windowsill like it was the only thing grounding him. A part of her wanted to say something, to close the distance, to help. But another part knew he needed to decide whether to let her in. But he's right about one thing, he said at last, voice clipped. There are things you don't know about me. Lena stepped closer. Then tell me. For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't, but when he finally spoke, his voice was raw, stripped of its usual armor. Catherine was my sister. He didn't turn around, just kept his gaze fixed on the city. She died in a car accident 3 years ago. She was brilliant and wild. Engaged to my best friend, James Richardson. Lena's chest tightened. She remembered the story, how a young couple had died in a tragic crash. It had dominated the news cycle. She just never connected it to Grayson. They were fighting that night, he continued, about the prenup my legal team had pushed for. If I hadn't been so controlling, so obsessed with protecting the family fortune, they might have stayed home. They might still be alive. His fists clenched on the windowsill. Without thinking, Lena stepped forward and gently covered one of his hands with hers. To her surprise, he didn't flinch, didn't pull away. The silence between them was fragile, woven from grief and something tender. Her hand stayed over his, a small offering of empathy in a world where power often drowned out pain. "It wasn't your fault," she said quietly. "Wasn't it?" He finally turned to face her. The pain in his eyes stole her breath. "I've spent my whole life trying to control everything around me," he said. "It's how I survive. But control, it's an illusion, and sometimes the cost of learning that is unbearable." Suddenly, Lena understood why he kept people at a distance, why their arrangement had to stay professional, why he'd built walls so high no one could scale them. It wasn't indifference, it was self-preservation. His strength wasn't armor, it was scar tissue. "Is that why you chose me?" she asked softly. "Because you thought I was safe, that I'd been hurt enough not to want anything real?" "I chose you," Grayson said, voice low, "because you're the first person since Catherine who wasn't afraid to challenge me. The first person who made me want to risk losing control." The space between them vibrated with tension. Lena was acutely aware of the narrow distance separating them. The heat coming off Grayson's body, the dark intensity in his gaze. "Grayson," she whispered. She didn't know if it was a warning or an invitation. The shrill ring of his phone shattered the moment. The name flashing on the screen, TechVision CEO. Reality came crashing back in. They had a crisis to manage, a leak to contain, a company to save. Whatever this was between them, whatever it could become, would have to wait. Grayson answered the call, his expression cooling, the CEO mask snapping into place. But just before he turned away, his hand squeezed hers, briefly, barely, but enough to make her wonder if she'd imagined it. Lena returned to her desk, her mind spinning. The day had started with a corporate emergency and somehow turned into something infinitely more dangerous. The collapse of emotional walls, the rise of feelings that could dismantle everything. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should have listened to your ex-husband, Lena. Some secrets are better left buried. Consider this your only warning." Her blood turned to ice. She glanced up at Grayson, now deep in damage control mode, and made a choice. She deleted the message without saying a word. He had enough to deal with today. This would be hers to handle. The warning proved prophetic. 3 days after the TechVision crisis, Lena arrived at Ellis Global to find the company in chaos again. Only this time, she was the center of it. CEO's secret lover. The truth about Lena Moore. The headline blazed across every major business outlet. The articles rehashed her marriage to Brian, painting her as a calculated opportunist who divorced with the intent of targeting Grayson Ellis. Leaked emails, heavily edited and clearly out of context, suggested she had been feeding information to competitors all along. "Don't read that garbage," Jenna urged her over the phone. "We'll fight this, Lena. I have to go," Lena cut in, watching Grayson storm into the office, his face a mask of rage. He shut the door behind him. "Explain," he said flatly, tossing a tablet onto her desk. On the screen was an email, supposedly from her to Brian, discussing Ellis Global's confidential data. "It's fake," Lena said without hesitation, locking eyes with him. "You know it's fake." "Do I?" His voice was low, controlled, lethal. 3 days ago, someone accessed our system using Brian's old credentials. Now, out of nowhere, there's an email linking you to him, suggesting you've been working with him this entire time. That's quite a coincidence. Lena stood, her shock giving way to rising anger. "Is that what you really think? That all of this, everything between us, was some elaborate setup? Our relationship?" Grayson laughed, sharp and hollow. "This was a business arrangement, Lena. Nothing more." The words hit like a slap. But Lena didn't flinch. "If you really believe I betrayed you, then fire me," she said, voice steady. "But we both know that's not why you're truly angry." "Don't. You're angry because you let me in, because for the first time since Catherine died, you let yourself feel something real." Grayson slammed his hands on the desk. The crack echoed through the office, making Lena jump. "You don't get to talk about her." "Why not?" she challenged, stepping closer, her voice softening. "Because it hurts? Because it reminds you you're still human?" "I know you're scared, Grayson. I am too, but I would never betray you." For a second, something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. Then his phone buzzed. An unknown number. Lena's blood went cold. The same number that had threatened her days earlier. Grayson's expression hardened as he read the message. "When were you going to tell me about the threat?" he asked, voice like steel. "How did you?" "I had IT monitoring all communications after the breach." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you had enough to handle," Lena said, running a hand through her hair. "And because I'm not Catherine Grayson. I don't need you to protect me." She knew the moment the name left her lips that she'd hit something raw. The shift in his posture wasn't subtle. It was as if a door slammed shut inside him. The mention of his sister seemed to snap something in him. "Get out." "What?" "You're suspended. Pending an investigation. Security will escort you." "Grayson, please." "Now, Lena." She grabbed her purse, pride warring with heartbreak. She wanted to scream, to throw the truth at him, to beg him to see past his fear. But she didn't. Not because she wasn't breaking inside, but because she refused to shatter in front of him. Not again. At the door, she paused and turned back. "You know what the difference is between control and trust?" He didn't answer. "Control is about fear. Trust is about courage. And right now, you're being a coward." She left before he could say anything. Her head held high as she passed the silent stares of employees. Lena didn't cry until she reached the sidewalk. Then the tears came. Hot, silent, angry. They weren't just about Grayson. They were about everything she'd swallowed for years. Every time she doubted herself. Every time someone had made her feel small. And this time, the betrayal came from someone she never expected. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the same anonymous number. "Smart girl, keeping secrets. Now meet me at the old warehouse on Perry Street if you want the truth. Come alone, or Ellis Global's next scandal will make today look tame." Lena stared at the message. Pieces began to fall into place. She knew that warehouse. It had belonged to one of Brian's companies. Before Ellis Global acquired it in a hostile takeover, she should call the police. She should tell Grayson. She should do anything except what she was about to do. But Lena Moore was tired of other people writing her story. The warehouse district was desolate when her cab pulled up. The building loomed dark and cold against the evening sky. Her heels clicked on the pavement as she approached the side entrance. The door was already ajar. Inside, emergency lights flickered, casting ghostly shadows. And standing in the center of the room, waiting, was Amanda Pierce, Brian's former assistant and former mistress. "I was starting to think you wouldn't come." Amanda's smile was razor sharp. "But I should have known better. You always were so predictably noble." "It was you," Lena said, the pieces falling into place. "You're the one who leaked the TechVision documents. You planted the fake emails." "Give the lady a prize." Amanda's laughter echoed off the concrete walls. "Brian may have been an idiot, but he taught me one thing. Information is power, and I've collected a lot of it over the years." "Why?" Lena demanded. "What could you possibly gain from trying to destroy Ellis Global?" Amanda rolled her eyes. "This was never about Grayson. It was about you." She pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over the screen. "You had everything. Brian's love, his attention. Then you left him, and instead of crumbling, you landed an even bigger target. The great Grayson Ellis. It's not fair." Lena nearly laughed. "Brian never loved me. He controlled me. Just like he controlled you. And now you're letting that same control ruin your life." "Shut up." Amanda's mask cracked. "You don't know anything. I'm the one in control now." "Put the phone down, Amanda." Lena's heart jumped at the sound of Grayson's voice. He stepped out from the shadows, his expression stone cold as his eyes locked on Amanda. Lena's mouth opened. "How did you? Did you really think I wouldn't have a tracker on your phone after everything with Brian?" Grayson's voice never left ice-cold calm. "And speaking of Brian, he's in custody. Apparently guilt talks faster when paired with federal charges." Amanda's hand trembled. She raised the phone slightly. One tap and every major news outlet gets evidence of Ellis Global's shady practices. Your reputation? Done. "Go ahead," Grayson said, voice eerily still. "Because while you were busy playing amateur hacker, my cybersecurity team was following your every move, every fake document, every doctored file, every threat. By tomorrow, you'll be facing charges for corporate espionage and data tampering." He stepped closer. "The only question now is, do you want to add blackmail to the list?" Amanda's face crumpled. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the concrete floor as uniformed security officers emerged from the shadows. "Take her," Grayson ordered. As Amanda was led away, he turned to Lena. "You should have told me." "And you should have trusted me," she replied. They stood there, the warehouse dim and quiet around them, months of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Grayson spoke, his voice raw. "When Catherine died, I swore I'd never let anyone close enough to hurt me again. I built walls," Grayson said, voice low, "created systems, controlled everything I could." He took a step closer. "Then you walked into my life and made me question everything." "I'm not Catherine," Lena said gently. "And you're not Brian. We can't let our past define what we could have." "I know." He took another step. "When I saw that threat on your phone, when I realized you were in danger, I've never been more afraid. Not of losing control, but of losing you." "So what are you going to do about it?" Lena asked, heart racing. Grayson didn't answer with words. He closed the distance between them and kissed her. It wasn't like the staged, calculated touches they'd rehearsed for the media. It was raw, honest, desperate, real. Everything they'd been holding back, released in one breathless moment. There was no performance this time, no veil of convenience or pretense. It was a kiss carved from vulnerability, from everything unsaid. It tasted of redemption, of risk taken, of walls crumbling, and something truer rising in their place. When they finally pulled apart, Lena smiled. "That wasn't very professional, Mr. Ellis." "I think," he said, brushing a hand down her cheek, "it's time we renegotiated our arrangement. No more pretending," he added, cradling her face. "No more walls. Just us figuring this out together." "And what about Ellis Global? The board? Your reputation?" Grayson shrugged slightly, his thumbs still stroking her skin. "Let them talk. Some things are worth losing control for." His voice was calm, but beneath it Lena felt the tremor of something new. Faith. In her. In them. Not because the path ahead would be easy, but because they were finally choosing it, fully and without apology. Outside, the sun was rising over Seattle. A new day, a new beginning. Lena looked at Grayson. Not the CEO, but the man who had finally learned to trust. And she realized, sometimes the control you think keeps you safe is the very thing holding you back from everything you've ever wanted. "So," she said, threading her fingers through his, "what now?" His smile, genuine, unguarded, was everything she'd once thought she'd never find again. "Now, we write our own story." And in that moment, standing in the place where every secret had come to light, Lena understood something. True love isn't about fairy tale beginnings. It's not about the absence of fear. It's about finding someone who makes you brave enough to face it, strong enough to move past it, and free enough to become everything you were always meant to be. The morning light streamed through the warehouse windows, turning everything golden. Outside, the city stirred to life. But inside, Lena and Grayson had already found their forever. One built not on fear or control, but on trust, courage, and the kind of love that makes every beginning feel like coming home. Dear friend, sometimes the hardest battle we fight is the one against ourselves. The fears we disguise as control, the pain we bury beneath "I'm fine," and the love we push away because it feels too risky. But as the Stoics teach us, we cannot outrun fate, only meet it with clarity and courage. Lena and Grayson didn't find a perfect love. They found something better, a love that asked them to be honest, to be brave, to surrender the illusion of control in exchange for something real. Maybe that's what all of us are looking for. Not a life without fear, but a life where we are no longer ruled by it. Let go. Step forward. You are more ready than you think. If this story moved you, please consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribing so you don't miss the next journey. Your support means the world to us.